Links to a channel here over at SubScribestar. The various other links. Thanks for the new people over at SubScribestar. So the right is awakening a little bit. How much faith? The thing with the right and the thing with the moderate position is with Charlie Kirk is you have the Christian family man, super moderate, if that's such a thing. Tries to be as nice as possible, wants to have open conversations, the open marketplace of ideas idea. And they remove him, and finding out who was behind the removal will tell you so much more. If it's a lone wolf, then that doesn't tell you anything. But if he's tied to a group, and if the FBI can find that out, then it will mean that he was more important than we thought. I never really thought of Charlie Kirk before, but he was in the running to be a president. I know it sounds ridiculous to left wing people to go, how dare you? But I mean, like in 30 years, he was 31 here. So it's like when he was in his 50s, 20 years from now, he might have been running for VP. And then 30 years, after that, running for president. It's like that was definitely on the table. That guy he had a huge social media footprint, and they took him out. So it's like finding out who took him out is going to tell you a lot about what those people fear and what direction Kirk was going in, which is, I'm going to do that for the Odyssey and SubScribestar videos. So the left wing has a serious mental illness problem that they're scared to call out because they don't want to call out the farther left, and the right wing calls out the further right way too often when they need to. Like, dear moderate right wing, you're losing. The Overton window has been shifting for 80 years, and people think, oh, we're moving it back. No, the tiny amount doesn't make up for 80 years of this shift. The right wing is firmly losing. And if the moderate right wing doesn't embrace the further right, like the moderate left wing embraces the further left, it's going to continue to lose. You're just going to have to stop fearing those buzzwords of istophobic type of thing. So the Hasan Piker has been advocating for violence on Twitch apparently for a long time. Somebody put together a compilation video on Twitter. I don't think I can play it here. I'll get struck. And he goes, "Oh, in Minecraft or in video games, or I'm just joking." Yeah, you can't do that. And in a less corrupt system, the FBI would have looked into that a long time ago. So the right doesn't usually have networked funded movements like the left does, and the right doesn't usually go into the cancellation direction. They're doing it a little bit now, and they did it a little bit after Trump at that rally. Because the thing is, if there's 10,000 people call a company, and some nurse, a bunch of nurses are celebrating Charlie Kirk's passing, and that's something kind of special where you go, yeah, you're around patients in the most vulnerable position. You're not selling insurance, and that's up to the user to decide if they want to work with you. You're on patients. Like, it's fair to say, yeah, you shouldn't be working at the hospital. You shouldn't be a nurse at all. It's just too much of a bias. So those people are getting fired because the things they're saying are like, well, you're here to save lives. That they're happy at the passing of a moderate, just Christian family man, everything the left hates. And you go, well, okay, so if someone was in under your care and they were a right winger or a political figure, what would you do to them? And that's just kind of the scary thing, is there's a lot of mental illness out there, and most of it is on the left. And I know the left hears that and think, no, everyone's got it. And no, I think there's been studies that show left wing women have the highest rates of mental illness, and the most mentally stable people are right-wing people who are in big families because they're kind of anchored to something. So Hasan on Twitch has been calling for violence for a long time, and people, I guess, have finally noticed it because of this everything that's going on. And this might be the push to kind of get him off there. And he'd probably just go to another I don't know how many other platforms, Twitch and TikTok and all these others, YouTube. And he's been timed out, but he hasn't actually been banned. But then they'll ban you if you call somebody fat or if you use the biologically correct pronouns. So apparently they're one of the many far left-wing platforms that supports stochastic threats and incitement of illegal acts as long as it's against the right target. And they've kept them up for so long because the right wing hasn't made a big enough deal about it. The right wing is way too apathetic. And it's like you could go, oh no, we believe in free speech and we're libertarians. That's, I mean, that's all well and good if you really believe that. But one, your enemies don't believe in that. And two, I think that's an excuse for apathy. The left wing works very hard, and they have, they have money coming in from the usual globalist sources, and the right wing doesn't have that. So the right wing would truly be grassroots organized, and that takes a lot of effort. And looks around, that's just the way it's going to have to be if you want to change things. The right wing needs to awaken. Toot sweet. So he was making violent threats against people, and I mean like outright threats of deleting people and the graphic means to do that, and saying out of context of a joke. The problem is threats are still illegal. So, and with him, interstate commerce or whatnot, FBI would get involved here because it's using essentially radio waves. So it's a bit odd that Twitch thinks the liability is worth the risk. I assume he's one of the bigger streamers. I gotta admit, I've only seen clips from him, and I look at those clips and I can't imagine why anyone would watch him unless they're, very much to the left of the bell curve, which a lot of left wing people are, but they think they're not. They always consider themselves like highly intelligent, and then you read some of the things they've written, you're like, where are you getting this from? So Twitch, I guess, supports and condones threats of or the possibility of actual violence occurring. So we have a problem with the mainstream media and social media being controlled by globalists and filthy, filthy globalists. And what stochastic terrorism is someone does what Hasan does, which is as specific as it gets. And the right wing occasionally does it, but not nearly to the extent. But I will admit I've seen it a little bit on the right too, but it's like 10-1. Is what they hope is that some crazy people hear the threat and they actually do the violence for them. It's like, people left wing usually swats people. Like they don't, they talk tough online, but then they call the police and try to get the state to murder you. And that's another issue is the American police force. Because I think the more I think about it, the more I keep looking at this ideas, I think it's bad on purpose. And I know Israel's tied in there with training. There's some conspiracy theories about that. But like this concept of a deep state, the more you look at it, the more you look at how ineffectual Trump and his cabinet is, you realize that there's a lot of momentum to overcome, and one president is not going to do it unless he was willing to risk everything, including using the military to like close the borders and declare it like a state of emergency and national security issue and start deporting people. That would be the only way to save the nation. And unfortunately, he's just not that guy. And I know a lot of people love him, but we need that guy. And it's like, okay, well, he's not that guy, but you are. And like what we don't have in power, we have in numbers and networks, but we have to step in and fill those networks positions. So his threats were as specific as it gets. It was naming people and naming methods and naming the outcome. And that, I'm like, that should get you a visit from some law enforcement, because he's hoping that some crazy people will hear the threat and actually do the violence for him. And the left wing does. It's like the sleaziest, cowardly thing to do, where they're hoping someone else does their dirty work instead of just stepping up and like confronting someone and talking to them. And it's like they say this kind of smarmy stuff instead of just like talking to someone and like people just don't talk the way in person that they do online. And it's not like because they fear violence from the other person. It's that they're looking in their eyes and they're hearing the words come out of their mouth in person, and they realize they sound like whiny, petty little bitches, which is, what a lot of people do. So people like Hasan are not actually going to do anything. He lives in a mansion, and he's talking about naming these capitalists, and he wants the streets red with their sanguine fluid. And you look at Hasan, like, you literally live in a mansion. If this thing ever kicks off, they're going to be coming for you first. It would be like posting his name and saying "We see you," and then putting a crosshair in the O or something, which is something I've actually seen before. That was my first introduction to stochastic terrorism. So they have for years been calling people on the right like Charlie Kirk, Trump, far right extremists or fascists. They've even concluded Shapiro and Fuentes and Dennis Prager for some reason. I saw his name. I'm like, I'm guessing a lot of this is the trans community, the BLT community, and J.K. Rowling, like a children's author, most harmless person ever, a firm left winger, but because she said something like, the pronoun, I don't know exactly if she even disagreed with the pronoun thing. It was like she didn't want men in women's centers for violent trauma type of thing, or hospitals, or changing rooms, that kind of stuff. Like, a woman who's just been the victim of male violence. It's like, okay, you just don't want men around. Fair enough. You don't want biological males around. And the left wing looked at that and like, oh no, we need to kill her for saying that. It's like, that's crazy. The left wing's got a lot of crazy people, and if the moderate left wing wanted to get control, you'd have to look at that and go, you know what, the trans issue is clearly a losing issue. Instead of like passively ducking away from it by just not supporting it, just openly cut ties with it. It's like that would be the way to get the most amount of power back, and saying, yeah, you can't threaten J.K. Rowling for saying that men aren't women, because objectively they're not. It's not to say anything against people who want to cross dress and live their lives, but it's like compelled speech, using violence to compel people to use pronouns. It's like, well, that most people agree that's wrong, and there's a contingent on the left that unfortunately cannot. So there's all these people on the list of who they want to be deleted next. They have their own Deadpool essentially, and if you're one of those, and they named a bunch of others too, but if you're one of those people who are like those people are vaguely on the right. Obviously, you got to be very careful now because things are heating up. You know, like where Fuentes is, he lives like in this house that's on a street, and like some crazy woman came up and talked to him. I think you gotta sell that house and move out to the country where you have a long road with a gate, and there's like clear fields of fire type of thing, because you can set up security that anyone who's coming is going to get a welcoming call of a 173 dovetail type of thing. So the thing is, this is widespread. The entire mainstream media is controlled by globalists. Elon Musk buying Twitter was the first big change, and that's its own video. I keep talking about making these other videos on videos, and then I immediately forget, because I've got a conspiracy theory about that. And Elon Musk is not a nationalist. He wants to replace America with Indians. In fact, he got very upset that people had the audacity to say, yeah, America should be for Americans, the people who made America, because they have their own, these other people have their own country. It's very large, actually. It's much larger than America. So it's kind of weird that we wouldn't just train Americans to do these jobs, fix the education system. And it's like there's been a deliberate dumbing down of American students, because at one time Americans were the best in the world. But he does allow more free speech on Twitter, so that's something. So left talks about these systemic systems. That's them. The left controls 90% of the infrastructure of the media. There are zero nationalist mainstream media, not even Fox. Both MAGA and Fox are fine with replacing Americans as long as people are legal. That's literally just globalism by another name. And Charlie Kirk was also a globalist. He was like, the idea of America is American people. I mean, he was such a moderate, but like he wasn't a conservative by any means, which is, them assassinating him just moves everything to the right, because you realize, like, oh, well, there's no point in trying to talk to people and trying to be a moderate. So this morning, Viva Free was talking about the need to go after Soros and shut down his funding for these Bolshevik NGO groups. And the platforms are not going to change. And there's, Larry Fink with BlackRock and funding Hollywood with, State Street and Vanguard to get these kind of ridiculous movies that perhaps you've noticed over the past 10 years. It's like mixed race gay dads with a catamite child that was in the Eternals, I believe. And like, you think I just made that up? No, I think that was literally a scene in the Eternals, which of course bombed. But bombing movies doesn't really matter to these people. Disney's probably got the best example, Disney Marvel, or Indiana Jones Part 5, time traveling Nazis, because nobody gives a shit about that anymore. So they have the same philosophy as Hollywood. They don't care what happens to their business. They really don't. You care what happens because you're not in this cult and you're not a billionaire, and the people at the top of this are very well taken care of. This is a as much a cult religion as it can be without, I don't know, maybe they worship what, Baal or Moloch or something like that. I think they're just mentally ill, deranged people. And like communists. You go back 100 years for communism, more than 100 years. Were they worshiping Moloch, or were they just worshiping this insane belief system, like getting so high on their own dopamine supply that they thought they're going to change the world and like they were going to kind of become gods with their theory? And it's like, yeah, but your theory is garbage. It never had a chance of working right from the start. People would look at it and go, yeah, this goes against human nature. And then the common refrain is, but if people only, and as people point out, they go, if you have to say, but if people only do this, it's like, well, your theory is not going to work. They're not going to do that. They have to do, you have to go in the direction of human nature. You can't go completely against it. So they're using these companies, what's it called, social engineering, to reshape the West into a communist failed state, and that's where we're headed, and we're very well along that way. There's a point where things can be fixed using the system processes, but that point passed a long time ago, unfortunately. The bureaucracy grows so large and complex that it has to collapse. The issue with this complex system is there are way too many different groups in America that directly contradict the intent of the founding fathers and the state they envisioned, the republic, gentlemen, if you can keep it. It contradicts the definition of a nation, the Natal. The growing globalist replacement in the West is to destroy the West. People see it daily, and they expect that one day their government and the system that got them here is going to suddenly awaken and turn around and fix it. That's a Pollyanna hope, except that they're here now, and everything has been getting worse since World War II, so you're not going to use the current system to change anything. The time to fix it would have been before they made the decision to go in the direction of a country of non-European people, when it was Western Europeans who made the country what it is. There are areas of the country with a hostile belief system. I can say, not to get too specific, where they openly talk about growing their numbers and simply taking over through democratic processes, and the rules of the current system don't allow them to be removed. And it's funny because the left-wing BLT community, the rainbow flags, are the one who were pushing to bring them in here. And immediately once they got in power at the city council level, they removed all those rainbow flags and the sidewalks. And the left-wing gay community and the far left liberals were like honestly shocked. They go, but we're on your side. We brought you in here. What did you think the scorpion was? I mean, it's literally throw them from a high place or stone them. I mean, that's in the book twice. So the thing is, there's no system to remove them because it would have been inconceivable to the founding fathers that they would be allowed in the first place. So the hostile forces continue to grow until they can just ignore the law, and they will, and they say the exact same thing in Europe. So the solution is going to have to be, a little bit unconventional. The right could start on this pathway simply by getting massively more involved, and they would just be able to swamp the left, forming right-wing groups of all sorts of different types and networking and working together. The left, Caroline Borisenko was on a Twitter live stream last night, and she studies the left wing really in detail for a long time, and she's talking about how well funded the left is. They get in these positions of power and they hire their own, and they move the Overton window as far as they can, and the right wing just doesn't do that. We don't work as a team. We have these we've been brainwashed, susceptible to this Hollywood globalist brainwashing of be independent and collectivism is bad. It's like every period of history has always had collective groups. What are you talking about? That's what a nation is. It's the race of the people making a nation great. You have to be a collective. Individuals get slaughtered. The collective, only groups can go up against groups. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.